Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our June caucus meeting. Lots on the agenda for this evening. We did have a special board meeting that occurred at 5:30 this evening to interview candidates for the board vacancy for Region 1, and I'm proud to welcome Mr. James Lineman, Jr., who is our new board member here at Susquenita School District, and he will be co-representing Marysville Borough and Rye Township. So welcome, sir. Going along with announcements, a special congratulations once again to the class of 2024. We had an outstanding ceremony last Thursday. It was also the last day of school for the school year, so lots of happenings. And we also said goodbye to some retirees that afternoon and honored some years of service. So lots going on that final week of school. And once again, a special congratulations. And thank you to Mr. Funk and the entire high school staff, Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Walk, for their outstanding preparation for the graduation, as well as Mrs. Jenkins for all that they did to prepare. Senior advisor, Mrs. Gecker, for all of her work in preparing for an outstanding commencement ceremony. Going into resignations, leaves, transfers, and employment under personnel items for the agenda coming up on June 18th. Under some resignations, unfortunately, we have Mrs. Sarah Cunningham from the position of emotional support teacher. She concluded this school year. We have Landon Finger, was one of our custodians, did an incredible job as well, and he's moving on. Mrs. Courtney Group, paraprofessional, also did an incredible job this year, and we wish her the best as well. Amy Hanshoe. Amy has been in a middle school for several years in our family consumer science position, and I think she wouldn't mind if I say that she's going home to her hometown and to continue. I believe she's a coach in her hometown district, so we wish Amy all the best, and she certainly will be missed. Number 5 and 6, resignation, Mr. Chester Holmes from the position of Assistant to the Superintendent for Finance and Operations, as well as Assistant Board Secretary. I get a chance, hopefully, maybe in August's caucus, to still keep Chester around for 90 days. But he's been an unbelievable colleague, an unbelievable professional, an outstanding resource, and I will miss his professionalism, as well as I can honestly say and openly, I will miss his friendship on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for your time and service. I look forward to the next 90 days of bothering you as we continue to put the budget over the finish line. And one thing I do know is he's only a phone call away, and things will be tidied up before any departure. And you continue to have the full court press on of accomplishing all the work that needs to be done. So thank you. Mrs. Hull, and you can't take that with you, Mrs. Hull from the position of elementary teacher, and Mrs. Scott from the position of instructional aide. We do have some employment aspects coming up, so we're excited about that as well. Mr. Scott Gant from Newport, custodian. Mr. Brandon Houts from Duncannon. He's coming home to be our music teacher at the middle school. Rebecca Paul. Rebecca's done an excellent job of completing all the requirements necessary to get that Pennsylvania certification, so she'll be our permanent science teacher and has done an excellent job in working within that science department at the middle school, so we're excited. She is a graduate here at Susquenita, so we're excited to retain her talents. We're asking to waive board policy 305, 405, and 505, which is our nepotism policy, to approve Lindsay Peterson for the position of Spanish teacher at the middle school. And Lindsay was a student here. Her husband is an outstanding math teacher at our high school, and we're excited to have the duo of Peterson and Peterson here within our school district, and excited for her unbelievable talents that she brings, the passion that she has within the classroom, and those instructional strategies. So our kids are going to be wowed by her dynamics that she brings in the classroom. And we're excited to bring to your consideration Lori Shear for the position of school counselor at the middle school. And Lori, I've had the pleasure of working with Lori in my previous in a previous school district I worked with, and she's unbelievably professional. She has a vast amounts of knowledge and skills. She's formerly worked and has a a plethora of experiences with grief and grief counseling, working in the caring place. So she'll bring all of those expertise to our school district and work as part of our counseling team. We have a change of, those are under, so I'll go through a couple more, I apologize. Megan Newmeyer, change in status, so she's worked extremely hard from bachelor step 5 to master step 5, obtaining that master's degree, so congratulations to Megan. We have 2 90-day successful evaluations, and time flies, certainly, for Aurora Shar, our coordinator of human resources. And if you get a chance to meet Aurora, she is very passionate, very energetic, and is one of the hardest working individuals I've seen in a long time. Carrie Simpson, paraprofessional. Carrie has done an unbelievable job and has a great skill set. So we're excited and hope that they continue for a long period of time within our school district. Athletic coach resignation, we have Mr. William Prince resigning from head varsity wrestling coach, and that position is filled, or not filled, but the position is open, and we're accepting applications at this time and resumes for anyone interested, and we thank Coach Prince for his work this school year. We have several athletic coaches and volunteers for approval. We're continuing to work through that, and we're going to approve those coaches on the former coaching matrix, the coaching matrix that we have in current place. So we're working through those, and we will add those as we go to ensure that they meet all the requirements thereof.
I have a quick question. I don't know if this is appropriate, like, because I have the coaches opened up from the agenda. Can I ask a question about those? Or?
Sure.
So it has Isaac Woodring as a JV coach and Dave Jenkins as JV coach. Is that correct?
No, we're working through some of the changes that come up, working through that coach's spreadsheet that we get the information, and we're working through some of the names and terminologies, and it's not finalized yet.
Okay.
Yeah, everything will be kind of tidied up prior to the June 18th meeting.
Okay, perfect. Then I won't ask
But no,
anything else.
Isaac, to my knowledge, is still going to be the head coach.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yep. And they work very closely in a good tandem. We've got
I had the same question about the assistant coaches for cross country.
Yeah.
Because I thought one of them was
middle school.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. So those are all the elements that will be looked at and reviewed
And
prior.
did we always have 2 assistant coaches for cheerleading?
Yes.
There
I
was
believe.
2 assistants?
Well, I don't believe one was filled. So there was always 2 that were there.
Okay.
But I believe last year there was only 1. But there was opportunity for 2.
Okay.
Yep. Volunteers. We have some volunteers for athletics as well. Independent golfers. We're looking to have an approve of 10 independent golfers for 24-25. We have 5 seniors and 5 sophomores and an independent golf coach and Coach Adam Timchek. 2 bus drivers for Aurora Bus, Caitlin Price, and John Straining. And we are looking to also approve, and that will come here as we get into agenda items, so I apologize. Any questions? That's a lot of personnel, and there will be additional personnel as we continue working through filling some vacancies that we have currently in place right now due to some relocations, and unfortunately also due to some retirements as well. That happens. Looking at agenda items for June 18th. This is the agenda that's really heavy in a lot of contracts. You'll see some treasurer's reports, some payment of orders. I'm going to have a motion to allow us to authorize the payment of July bills, and that's in the event later in the agenda if you approve the cancellation of the July board meeting. That gives our office the authorization to pay bills and not wait for them to be delinquent in August. We are looking at the major item in June 18th, which is the approval of the 2024-25 general fund budget. And we'll go over some of that information there tonight as well, but the budget must be approved on June 18th, 2024, in some capacity and format. We are looking to approve the Homestead Farmstead resolution, and the amount on the Homestead Farmstead resolution and exclusions is based upon the budget taxing rates from the general fund budget. So that will be determined based upon what you approve and the millage rates you set forth. We're looking to approve our workman's compensation insurance, as well as to approve an authorization for the assistant to the superintendent for finance and operations to make end-of-the-year budget transfers as part of the end-of-the-year financial statement audit, and bring those transfers from categories back to you as upon the completion of the full audit. I believe our auditors will be in relatively soon to do some samplings. We're also looking as a motion to transfer the general fund from the general fund to the cafeteria fund, because we cannot write off bad debt from delinquent and lunch accounts. So we're working on getting that number, and we'll get that number because we're still working on getting that number down. I think we'll be pleasantly surprised that that number last year was 15,000, and it will not be 15,000 this year. The business office has done an excellent job, both Mr. Holmes and Mrs. Wisen, of making and sending out automated phone calls. I know sometimes they can be a lot, but they're important to make sure that that debt doesn't get rolled over and our taxpayers aren't paying for that debt. And that's important because we cannot incur that debt from year to year without taking from the general fund. It's 2 years' worth of debt. So 2 years' worth of debt cannot be rolled over because it becomes bad debt. So we'll be looking at that to make sure that that we try to do our best to stay on top of that and clean that up as well. So that's why community members get emails and they get phone calls when their account balance goes below into the negative or zero or gets low. We have appointment of district solicitors and special counsel. Motion to approve Mr. Daniel Altland, attorney, Carl Beard, attorney. Both of them have no increase in their hourly rates. In Stock and Leader for special counsel, and that's an increase of in $10 an hour, which is still a relatively small rate, an increase in certainly in my opinion. Continuing down, motion to approve the board officers to execute the deed and related previously approved at the April 16th, 2024 regular board meeting, documents to dissolve the Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center Authority and execute all related documents. So again, continuation of some of the legal documents that need to be on file with the courthouse, need to be notarized in order to dissolve the old authority that was Cumberland Perry AVTS, and now beginning that formation of a new authority, which is the Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center, part of that building project that we authorized our portion, which continues as they continue to plan and look at their opening bids and begin that construction process as it takes shape. I believe there's a special board meeting tomorrow at Cumberland Perry to discuss the building project in a little bit more detail. So some contracts coming down the pike here as well. We have access, sports and student accident policy. We also have a motion to approve Blue Line Safety as our armed security officers, and that is pending registration with PCCD, which is the Pennsylvania Commission of Crime and Delinquency. They just need to be an approved provider before we authorize them to be on campus. That provides one safety and security officer who's an Act 235 officer on a daily basis at a rate of $39 per hour, and they would provide the services for after-school events as needed for sporting events, events such as concerts or other elements or entities. Capital Region Partnership for Career Development, they provide a tremendous amount of activities and for our students both at the middle school and high school. And that's a partnership that we belong to and continue to be a part of and provides a lot of different opportunities. Looking to approve our CM Regent, which is our property and casualty, our access liability, cyber liability, law enforcement legal liability, auto liability, school leaders liability, and equipment breakdown. Clear Path Pediatric Therapy, LLC, is our provider for speech and language services. They continue to be really good partners for us and have done an excellent job. We have a Commonwealth of University agreement to provide an affiliation for field study, internships, practicums, and student teaching for Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, and Mansfield. So if we get some students who are in the area and want to come home or have friends, that they can come and have an agreement in place to student teach with us. And we found that to be really great because hopefully other employment opportunities come into play, as well as short-term, long-term substitute teaching. And possibly, we've been fortunate to hire some student teachers when there's openings that come because they forged those relationships and have already get to know the ins and outs of the school. Agreement with Dr. Tag Glossner to be our school dentist to provide student dental exams at $1 per exam. He's been phenomenal in helping us, so we appreciate Dr. Glossner. Lackawanna College agreement, we're working on getting that as they've had some transition of some administration. Millersville University, looking at a 5-year affiliation agreement for field placements as well, hoping to continue to get some students from Millersville University. New Story, extended school year services for a student. Pinnacle, looking for school doctor to provide medical services for the 24-25 school year. For physical examinations and for physician supervision and services. UPMC Express Care and UPMC Urgent Care to provide our PPD test, which is the tuberculosis test that's required, as well as physical exams, which is required for several different categories and classifications in accordance to the school code for employees. Vista School tuition for a student, as well as Ms. Joanne Zahn for occupational therapy services. Looking for a motion to cancel our July meeting as well as our policy and committee and caucus meeting. So we're looking to kind of cancel everything for July, give you as a collective group a much needed break, and we will certainly touch base throughout the summer, but hit the ground running fresh in August. We'll have some updates as well as some administrative reports, and we have some disposition of poor conditioned items, metal cabinet, some novels that are no longer in good condition, a couple of sets of those, and a disposition of, at the high school, a Yamaha keyboard that no longer is in working order. And that rounds out agenda items. I'll take any questions at this time. All right, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Holmes for a review of our finances.
Good evening. In front of you, you have a revenue statement for the board summary. And we are showing revenues of $32,800,335.13, represents approximately 99.6% of our anticipated revenues for the year. And if you look at the expenditures, $28,847,934.15, which is approximately 86.11% of our anticipated expenditures for the year. I would note that there's timing differences, which is the reason between the lag of revenue and expenses. We do expect to expend all of our budgeted expenditures by probably September 1st, when all the bills have come in for May and June, and we can process them through. Pass those out for me, please. Any questions on that?
I just have a question on the revenue portion. So it looks like we're almost at 100% of the revenue based on what, the budget amount was originally. But some of our numbers came in higher than what they were originally budgeted. Do you expect there to be more revenue coming in, like on some of the taxes and stuff that are still lower?
These reports do not include grant revenue, so that's why you were asking a meeting or so ago about the discrepancy between what we thought budgeted revenues were. So that does not include any grant revenue. So what you're asking for would best be answered with what I would call a variance analysis, and that's something that I would think you would want to see, which goes over, this is what we budgeted, this is what we expected, but this is what we received, and why did we receive it? The same thing with expenditures. So if I were you, I would ask for one of those in the future, that variance analysis.
What did you call that again?
A variance analysis.
Okay.
And
So-
that'll go through the detail of saying, okay, we anticipated this much in earned income tax, and we received this much. And here's why we budgeted what we did. So that'll sort of give you the explanation from one year to the next, and you'll be able to see why and where the amounts landed.
So just, and I'm not even sure which one of these lines would be like the basic ed subsidy. Is that on here? Is that like where the 8 million line is?
Yes.
Okay, so we received 400,000 plus more than what we initially thought we were going to budget for. Because we
Correct.
always budget flat line, not with what the state is going to increase. So that's higher, but we're still at this 99%. So I guess what I'm asking is, do you expect some of the tax revenues, more of that to still come in before the end of this fiscal year? Or are our revenues sort of in now? We're not expecting anything more to come in?
The only additional revenues I would anticipate would be from the grant monies that we have not received. Some of it's passed through the intermediate unit. We haven't received that yet. That typically doesn't hit until probably September. So most of the revenue, I would say, is probably in, yes.
And the grant monies would be in the neighborhood of, do we have any idea numbers-wise, just ballpark on that we would expect?
That would be from the ESSER's funding, and I don't have that information in front of me, but I can get that for you.
Okay. And then you said in terms of expenditures, we only have expenditures that will go through June 30, but they may not be realized in numbers until they've been actually paid. But it's only stuff that we would incur till June 30?
No, we would actually accrue back the teacher salaries. We will pay them through the middle of August, but that will all relate to this present school year.
Okay.
So that information will be accrued back.
Okay.
So the expenditures will equal at least what we expected them to be.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. So in front of you, we took out the loan through FNB for capital projects, and we initially had a closing date of May 22nd, but we were able to encourage everyone, and they were willing to close early, so we actually closed 8 days earlier than we anticipated, which gave us access to the money 8 days sooner. And we have broken out the money into different tranches. There are 7 of them. And the first tranche is the money that we anticipate having to pay for the Cumberland Perry, if that project is on go. That's due the middle of July. And then, as you can see with the rest of them, while tranche 2 is to pay for the second payment to Cumberland Perry.
Yes, so one payment in July, and I believe the second payment is in November. So they're broken into 2. So Mr. Holmes, when he did this, also broke it into 2 to maximize interest earnings.
So tranches 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are splitting the money up into various amounts to, and they're all invested for a year at 5.42%. So we're actually making 97 basis points on all of the money, the balance of the money. So roughly 14.2 million we're going to be able to have invested. And you can see there, gross interest earned over 12 months will be $756,798. The net interest earned, which would be the difference between what we borrowed and what we owe, is $135,000, and then the interest expense payments that we will make in 24-25 are $517,312.50. The most important number being that net interest earned, which is the difference between what we owe and what we've received. And
So
then
in terms, I'm sorry, in terms of the Cumberland Perry thing, what will happen if it's higher? Like, if it turns out to be more money than what we were on the hook for, what will happen?
Yeah, lots of different movable parts. Tomorrow night is a meeting to discuss at the Joint Operating Committee. So if in fact, there's a lot of different possibilities, right? But we, as a board, approved a total not to exceed the 23.5 million, which was the total aspect of that building construction project. I think that's what the total was, somewhere in that avenue and ballpark, but then our portion of that. So that would require a full authorization again of all of you in order to move forward with any change if there was needed and it necessitated a change.
And will it have to take will every school
That's
board
correct.
have to
Yes.
reapprove it just like they did the last time?
Yes, yes. Unless they decide to use any of their capital reserves for anything or add any of that element. So lots of discussions that will be had. There's a lot of different factors that could come in. If your number comes in construction costs a little higher than what you thought it would be or higher than what you thought it would be, you could do a couple of different aspects, right? You could go back out and rebid it and wait and see if conditions change, or you could value engineer it, meaning what can you change in there from a quality perspective or an item perspective, what can you remove and what can you change within the design to still keep that program the way you want it to, but look at different materials or different substitutes that could reduce costs.
But we don't really think that they're not going to abandon the project altogether. Like, I was just wondering what that would do to the loan that we had specifically earmarked part of this loan to be used for the payment to.
Certainly, we borrowed $15 million, and by chance, if that $2.38 million does not go to a project, that can be back into revenue that you have to continue to invest as a small issuance, to continue to arbitrage that money until a later date, or any other decisions that you as a board decide to use those proceeds within funds. But for all intensive purposes right now, and for anybody listening, the project is still a go. I just think there's work like any project, especially one that's adding to a building. There's a lot of discussions that still need to happen on what that looks like. Sometimes even the smallest projects are the ones that give you the most gray hair, not always the largest ones.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And lastly, the reason that we broke the loan proceeds out into different tranches were if there was a reason an emergency came up and we had to break one of these, we wouldn't lose as much interest. So it would be, that's why there's varying amounts that we have deposited with each tranche.
And back to the Cumberland Perry, it is my hope that the project still moves forward and those programs are still available for the students in the future and to get that done. That is certainly our sincere hope, because that's why we approve that, to see that long-term plan. But we'll communicate back out when we hear otherwise from the Joint Operating Committee.
I had a question. Looks like each one of these is invested for a year, roughly, with the exception of one, which is 60 days, and two, which is 180 days because of the Cumberland Perry payment. We had talked about using some of this money for other things as well. So am I correct that won't be possible because all of this money is tied up for 360 days?
No, that's incorrect, because we have the board has adopted a resolution that we can reimburse the general fund. So anything over the next 18 months that would be used for a capital project could then be reimbursed from these loan proceeds.
So one of the things we had talked about doing is hiring a firm, for lack of another way of saying that, to come in and do a site study, talk about future needs. So if we do agree to do that, what I understand you're saying is we would just pay for that out of our reserves and then reimburse ourselves 360 days later?
We have that option. However, for that particular project, I would call your attention back to the front page where we have $135,000 of net interest earned. So that money will be available for use as it comes in as well.
So there's a possibility that what we're talking about right there, which is a great and really needed aspect, to be able to go out and look at an independent engineering firm to come and do a full site evaluation and facility study, a robust facility study that takes a deep look at all of our facilities and kind of help to continue that future planning and give us a full board direction that, yes, we can utilize our capital fund to be able to take from that now, pay ourselves back from the interest earned because we have the ability within that resolution, reimbursement resolution that you passed as a board, that gives you that tool and mechanism to be able to do that.
But that interest earned will not be available until after 360 days, correct?
12 months.
Or 12, well, roughly 12 months. So we would still have to reimburse ourselves.
Correct. Correct. You'd reimburse yourselves, absolutely, by interest earned, which essentially what we would be doing is taking interest earned on a loan, taking funds from our capital improvement fund, reimbursing ourselves, at which time really then that engineering would be a value add to the district. Pardon? Maybe. But yes. So,
Okay, yeah, I think that
yep,
helps. Thank you.
you're welcome. Mr. Holmes, thank you for putting this together. I think it is really interesting when we began that process of talking about a small issuance loan, right? To take a look at what we were able to earn interest rate-wise and what we're able to earn investment rate-wise, and that difference being at a really good spot for us. And you do have that ability at any time to turn around and to turn that loan in for the lack of better term to use. If you see that after we invest for the locked-in rate time of 360 days, if we see the economy doing something that's in the long term that we don't like, we can revisit that conversation. So it gives you as a board full autonomy and authority to control your assets and money.
So after 12 months, it all kind of is up in the air then, because we won't know if the interest rate that we receive in return for our investment could very well be lower than the interest rate that is costing us to borrow the money after 1 year, correct? Or 12 months.
Yes, that is a possibility.
So that might be, then we might be like, okay, we need to return all of this, or because we're losing money at this point.
Yep, or you might
not.
say, hey, let's do project A and B, and then return B and C.
Okay.
Or use it all for projects A, B, C, and D.
Okay.
It's up to you as the board what you would like to do. Gives you lots of different mobility, if that's the right word, to manage the funds.
Thank you.
You do a better job explaining that than I do.
I just have one quick other question about board expenditures. Two of them, and maybe you've explained this in the past, two of them are kind of sticking out that are at 938% expenditures. One for professional and technical, and the other one for other objects. Do you know what is driving those to be at 938%?
I can certainly get you the answers to what items are in those classifications. The hard part is knowing why, for example, I think you're referring to 1,100, 300 purchase professional technical
Yeah.
services. So I don't know why the $3,495 was so small. But when the $29,000 came in, we decided that that's where it should be classified. So it's really a classification issue.
Okay.
The good thing going forward is you know where every dollar has been classified for the 24-25
Right.
school year.
Okay.
And that, moving forward, will help that you set that up to know that intuitive format to look then from the 24-25 to 25-26 to look at those variances that you can see between those categories across the board.
I wouldn't anticipate seeing those next year without a good explanation of, those are the items we had in that category, but here's the one that came in that we didn't, so.
Okay, thank you.
And that classification is largely a judgment call on the business managers.
Somewhat it is. However, the state does have a chart of accounts, and when the state comes in for an audit, they want to make sure that you're using those accounts appropriately. So for the purposes of the budget, I wanted you to have a picture of how much was spent in special education. So Ms. Pressy's salary and benefits was included in that. However, according to state chart of accounts, it cannot go there. It has to be moved into guidance. So I'll move it out of guidance, and you'll have a finished product of where everything has been rearranged to. There was a question about tuition for teachers, and that has its own special account. The state says that's where it has to go. We really can't classify it anywhere else.
Well, and I'm sad to see you resigning, but I wish you well. But I also think you've done an amazing job for us and worked well above the hours that, because we have demanded a lot as a board, and you've provided that, and I appreciate it. I'm hoping that our future business manager is able to come in and will categorize things the same way you did. Because for the last probably 4 years, we have not been able to compare apples to apples when we look at our budget. So I'm hoping that the next business manager follows the same classification system.
They'll certainly have the blueprint for it going forward, but Dr. Fox has been incredible at sort of walking this process. So he's very knowledgeable, probably more than most superintendents, about what happens in the business office. Whether he's wanted to or not, he does. So
I mean, I'd like to go as far, and I'm only one board member, but I'd like to go as far as to say, what's that?
Requiring them to do it.
Yes, that our new business manager better use the same classification system, and if it's a judgment call, that if they're not going to, that goes through Dr. Fox, because we've got to get to a point where we can compare apples to apples in our budgets. So
I think there's always going to be little variances that you're going to look at and have those discussion items. But, I think if we're looking at everything to be, and I'm not making built-in alibis, but I think if we're looking at everything to be, even my own, personal finances and household checkbooks, everything's not categorized all the time. We have discussions as to what categories different things go into, in terms of pots
I'm
of
okay
money.
with that, but I don't want to see 600%.
Well, 100%.
spent.
I don't think we all do.
And
we're
that
discussing
happened
where-
a lot,
Correct.
And that wasn't per se anyone's fault. It's just a different classification. So,
Correct.
No reason not to trust Mr. Holmes's judgment and the way he classified things, and I hope that we try to stick to that as much as possible.
So I think the cool thing about Mr. Holmes is his level of expertise, not just in, he's got a certified public accountant, which is a rare entity, but he also has expertise and a master's in education. So you get that is a really powerful combination for a school district to have that level of expertise, to be able to not just see numbers, but to know what those numbers mean in terms of an operation of a school. That's going to be sadly and widely missed. So you're giving me a lot of kudos. That's not the case, because you are able to see it, know it, explain it, and talk education. And that's a rarity. So let's move on with the niceties of each other. I'm getting emotional.
But I do, and I like Mike, I really appreciate what Mr. Holmes has done and the work that it took to do that. And I would certainly hope that it wasn't done in vain, right? That we can use that as a very strong template. I understand somebody, that they may have their nuances of how they do things, but if it is fairly arbitrary, then why can't they just follow the same arbitrary thing that he's already established, that I don't think seems arbitrary? I think the things made sense where they went. They made sense that they're in these classifications where they seem like they belong. And so, yeah, I would like as a board member to be able to do that apples to apples comparison we just haven't been able to do for years.
Yeah.
So Dr. Fox said you were only a phone call away, Chester, so you might not want to give him your new phone number.
That is true. I hear that a lot, actually. That's all true. Right? Yes.
Because we really all know who's the brains behind the business.
You too.
We have another element and handout we want to go over with you as well. We want to talk a little bit about some of the information when we look at our electrical usage, and we have a handout for you as well as we continue to watch, monitor, and see some happenings within our own district, within the market, and what's happening across the board. Thank you. This handout is a summary, just of some bullet points. Over the past 3 months, Mr. Holmes and Mr. Howell have worked in combination together to ensure that March and April and May, and looking at our controls and our programs and our systems, to look at how they're operating. And because of that, we were able to see our electrical usage from where it was spiking and peaking and looking very much like a Hershey Park roller coaster ride begin to stabilize the way it should. And within that, they were able to see a 29.67% average reduction in electrical usage. Our current electrical contracted rate is 3.43 cents per kilowatt hour. And as I said, and I continue to say, it's a wonderful agreement, historical agreement, and really was a great asset to the district. Unfortunately, like all good things, it certainly comes to an end in December 3rd of 2024. We got off the phone today with our current energy provider who provides that outstanding rate for us. Mr. Holmes did a great job of trying to say, we will take that current rate and continue for the next 3 years. Go ahead and just roll it over. They were appreciative of the phone call and said, currently right now what we're able to offer you is 5.8 cents for 12 months, 5.9 cents for 18 months, and 6.1 cents for 36 months, which equates to roughly 68.75, 71.66, and 77.48% increase in electrical costs, respectively. That star there is indicative that it does not include transmission, distribution charges, market charges, and gross receipt taxes. So whatever provider we choose, PP&L will add those charges on that bill. We got news today as well that the energy community within the state of Pennsylvania has been redrawn, and Susquenita School District is now deemed to be within what's called an energy community district. What that means is it entitles the school district, if there was an interest in any project with Inflation Reduction Act, to be entitled to an additional 10%. So looking at that 10% and on additional items that we discussed prior with the solar, or any project that's eligible under the Inflation Reduction Act, that could qualify for an up to a 50% rebate, which, let's say if it was a $6 million project, it would cost the district $3 million. So that's something certainly, as we move forward with that engineer and looking at a full study, that's something to keep in mind as well. And this handout is your handout to have. And we will continue to talk electricity as we'll need some direction, at least sooner rather than later, as to what to do for the December 3rd, 2024 contract expiring. We want to get something in place because we don't want to go to what just the default rate is.
Just
So what is the, what do you, how do we save 30%? Let's go there.
How did we save 30%? We saved 30% by looking at our controls. Mr. Howell and Mr. Holmes took a look at our controls and our systems. What we were seeing was kind of a stacking effect of some of the calendars, and it was causing the systems to kind of regenerate. So what they were able to do is use the systems the way they were entitled to be programmed, the controls at which you approved it through the ESSERS program, to be able to operate in the mechanism of occupied versus unoccupied, and set those systems and watch those systems very carefully.
Okay. So before, I think we needed an $8 million solar array to replace our electricity. So now, are we at a $6 million one?
Yeah, I think we're definitely could possibly look at a smaller array based upon what our usage is and trending that usage, and we'll continue to track that. It's 3 months. You know, we're not doing backflips yet. Certainly smiling, but not doing backflips because I can't do those anyway. But we'll continue to look at what those trends are, especially as we start getting into July and August, what we call the dog days of summer, just making sure that our systems continue to work effectively. We want to be mindful in the summer because our dehumidification system works with our HVAC system, and that's imperative to the operations of those buildings. So we'll continue to watch that initially too, to see what we're able to do. But yeah, that would be something for that independent engineer to take a look at and scale that downward and place it into an area where I get excited that we're not looking and spattering them all over the campus. Absolutely.
And then so then that would also break the cost down to $3 million if we could get down to a $6 million array.
Possibly, yes. Yep.
And have we looked any more into if we can use the other property?
Other property as of in
And
code?
maybe not put them on site at all.
It is too far. It's over 2 miles, even as the...
Even if you stand on the far corner?
Yeah, and I believe that is a delineated wetland.
I think the other thing to keep in mind too is because we've now are looking at the possibility of reducing the size of the solar array because we've reduced the amount of electricity that we're using, we're also reducing the amount that the actual cost will go up every month. So just quick numbers, I'm looking at about $100,000 a year that the total cost of our electricity increases. Because distribution and all that stuff we have, regardless of what we're paying for the actual generation costs. But even just back in February when we were looking at putting in the solar array, the quote that we had was 6.7 cents. Now we're at 5.9, 5.8. And if we do have a 30% reduction, then all of the numbers that we had based on 5.8 million kilowatt hours a year are now going to be closer to 4.25 kilowatt hours a year, which means that's less that we're actually saving or losing. So,
You know, it was really, really fascinating today. And when you look and you talk to an energy provider, an electric company, on the phone, you always ask about what are some ways to save, you know, and they talk about, you know, there's different studies that you can do, and they provide independent contractors to come in and do LED and light studies and energy efficiency studies, all that good stuff. And they also mention solar. And they're an electrical company who mentions that because they also say it can control your peaks and can control your tags. And with that, you're also then protecting some of those additional taxes and costs by protecting it at times when there's a utilization of a heavier amount, which is just a fascinating study. And, you know, again, I don't want to belabor that. I think we've got some site work to do. And if you're okay with it, you could tell me right now, I don't necessarily need a vote, but I have no problems of reaching out to some contacts that are independent engineers and get some pricing to prepare for August caucus meeting and prepare some engineering quotes for you.
Yeah, I was actually going to suggest that if you're looking at maybe doing something by December, we have some decisions to make. I was actually going to suggest that we be prepared in August to have that conversation. I mean, we've talked about having an independent engineer come in and do a feasibility study, but we haven't really talked about whether we want to spend money on that or whether we all even agree whether we should be doing that or not. So I absolutely think that would be a good discussion to have in August.
Yeah, definitely. If you're okay with it, let me make some calls. Let me get some proposals. Let me get some costs. Let me analyze those costs and bring some information at August's caucus back to you.
And
I'm
again,
not approving anything. I'm bringing that information to you.
But again, in my mind, it's as simple as looking at whether we're going to be building another building at some point in the future, or whether we're going to be using all of our property to put solar arrays all over. We don't have the room to do both, or maybe neither. So that's the general idea behind getting an engineer to come in here and take a look, correct?
Absolutely. And to look at our systems too, and to give a good review of not just the site plan, looking at all the great spaces we have, but also looking at some of the systems and taking a deep dive and working with our teams to look at life expectancy of systems.
Yeah, like, do we need to continue to spend thousands of dollars, hundreds perhaps of thousands of dollars to patch a roof that maybe needs to be replaced in 3 years? You know, that type of thing.
100% agree. I'll do some work on that. All right, thank you, Mr. Holmes. Now we're going to go to curriculum instruction updates, unless you have anything else, sir. I'm sorry.
We're good?
Yep, go ahead.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to mention a few items that we have coming up this summer. We have 4 major summer programs that we're getting ready to kick off on June 17th this month. Our STEAM camp starts, where we have our K through 8th graders given the opportunity to come to the middle school and work for 4 days with a great, awesome team of teachers. So offering this free opportunity to our students, starting just in a couple weeks. We also have our SOAR program starting at the elementary school in July, and our Early Birds Kindergarten Camp, which will start the first week of August. And I know Ms. Brezzi's been working hard also on our extended school year program in the special education department, which will start actually just in a couple weeks as well at the end of June. Also really excited that yesterday was our first day of our summer learning series for our trade days, and our teachers worked really hard. We had our math and our science committees working on curriculum all day yesterday, and really it just kicks off a whole summer of different events that we have that our teachers were able to choose from for professional learning opportunities. One of those also being a presentation that we have coming up shortly for you about the Lifted Teaching and Learning Conference, which actually is a week from today. So we're really excited. We'll give you some updates very soon on that. And then also I wanted to have Mr. Funk just kind of talk to you a little bit about a proposed Algebra 1 revision for this upcoming school year. So Mr. Funk?
Thank you. I wanted to bring it to the board's attention. Since in January I present to you all the proposed changes with the handbook, and that's before we start scheduling and the year's even finished. Well, it focuses on Algebra 1. Currently, Algebra 1 is 1.5 credits a year because every other day it has a double period. So 3 periods are taken up by 2 classes. So we're able to teach 4 sections of Algebra 1. We hired the new math teacher, Ms. Sengaz, who's been doing a great job, meeting regularly with Mr. Brokus, the new department leader, and myself, looking at data, look at individual classroom progress. And they came to me just last week, everything wrapped up, and said they would like to move from the 1.5 credit to a 1 credit class that meets 1 period every day. That would enable them to get 2 more sections of algebra in, lowering the class size. And that would also benefit the students because right now the students aren't able to take an additional elective. They get that half credit of math, which is actually an elective credit. This would open up a whole period in their day, allowing them to take additional classes or another elective. So I said I'd bring that. I reached out to Dr. Fox and Krista, and I said, may I bring this to the board to see if that's all right, that we make this change, that we'd move to a single period algebra class, which would significantly reduce numbers in the class and allow us to offer additional sections. So that would be our proposal for this coming year.
I think my only question I have about it is, a couple years ago we read Algebra 1A, Algebra 1B, and my understanding was the reason why it went to the 1.5 was because you were taking 2 years of algebra, putting them into the Algebra 1, and that the extra half credit was necessary or Mr. Brokers had felt to be able to cover that material. What changed?
Yes and no.
To now.
You're pretty close. Basically, when we had Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, by the time the kids came to take the Keystone Algebras at the end of Algebra 2, the initial information they learned
You mean
a
Algebra
year
1A?
ago, in
Algebra
Algebra
1A and
1A, they
1A
took
and
the
1B.
exam at 1B.
Okay.
Okay. So by the time they got to the test, some of the initial material had been almost 2 years before, and they said, well, let's not spread it over 2 years. Let's do 1 year, we'll add a half a credit. That happened in 2021 school year. So now we've had several school years looking at that, and the teachers are saying, we would rather have the lower class numbers to be able to provide the more direct instruction than having that extra period every other day.
Okay.
So our scores need something changed, and this is the latest recommendation that they want to try with the new teacher in there.
And how does that still marry with what's happening in the middle school? Are they only having a same length
Yes.
period time in the
Yeah,
middle
it'll be
school?
a 1 credit in the middle school. That's correct, isn't it?
Okay.
Thank you.
I just had one question for Mrs. Snyder. Last year, I think you gave us a copy of the Summer Trade Day catalog. Can we have a copy of that?
Absolutely.
Maybe
Yes,
Tuesday?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, because our board meeting is an extra.
I'll send it.
We'll get it to you.
Get it,
No, that's a good point. It's not next Tuesday, it's the following
I'll
Tuesday.
share it.
get it electronic.
What?
We'll get it electronic.
I want a hard copy.
And we'll bring you a printed copy in 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Mr. Funk, thank you very much, and thank you to our math teachers as well. Thank you for that, the math teachers coming together as a collective group and working as Algebra 1, from that really important class, working then where is that going upwards in terms of Algebra 2, geometry, pre-calc, calc, and then also that back mapping process that occurs, right? Working to pre-algebra, working then to 7th grade, 6th grade, 5th grade, and downward to look at what is that system of the foundational spiraling skills that are necessary to continue those progressions and mathematical mindsets needed to be able to tackle that. And that's a lot of it too, is formulating those mathematical mindsets necessary to understand that it's that you don't have to be quote unquote, pardon me, good in math, but it's an attitude and growth mindset, which is a great segue into our next presentation on Portrait of a Graduate, which is about mindsets, skills, and attitudes and competencies that are well beyond just the Pennsylvania standard aligned curriculum, as well as those standards necessary for Chapter 49 and Chapter 339. So one of the great questions that we come up is, what is a portrait of a graduate? Ooh, that looks better than what I had. Really, this portrait of a graduate, a lot of school districts utilize a service called Battelle for Kids, and that's where I got a lot of this information from. And Battelle for Kids is out of the AASA, which is the Association for School Administrators. It's a national organization, and you bring this organization and group in, and they begin these think tanks to help kind of identify what school was, could be, and is. And we utilized some of their resources that were out there, some of the resources that are out on the internet, but we did not purchase their services. We locally developed it ourselves. So it is cool because it becomes that mission short of just what's written, but it becomes this pictorial representation in a system for full transformation. So it's really awesome. I think for me, this committee, the power was in the conversations that we had about teaching and learning. It was fun. We had a great time. We brought the group back together here, and this year kind of had some finality to it. But the hard work then begins after your consideration for approval. The hard work begins of using this as we look at our curricular work. As we look at our facilities planning, as we look at opportunities in courses and course redesign and class redesign, that we look at how are we making sure that our early learners, to our middle learners, to our higher learners, to our graduates are building upon these skills and attitudes and competencies. And this becomes our commitment to the full community about these skills that becomes ever important to us. So one of the questions you probably asked or are thinking is, how in the world was this created? Well, it was created by a full committee that did a tremendous amount of work. The committee consisted of students, teachers, staff, administrators, parents and guardians. We had college representatives, business representatives, board members from all kinds of the service industries coming in and representing and being a part of these discussions that lasted well over a year, that we created a listing at the end of skills and competencies. Then we took those skills and competencies out and asked for feedback from people to see what they thought of those. And then we beat it up some more until we finally came up with a student-designed rendition of what it is, which is our portrait of a graduate pictorial representation, which is slide number 6. That's okay. So I'll speak. Our student, Brindley Harrison, did an amazing job as part of a class of designing this. It was a student-led design. All I said to them is, here are the skills and competencies, you design it. And they asked a lot of great questions. Well, what are you looking for? Nope. No, it's not what I'm looking for. How would you present it? Well, what would it look like and sound like and feel like to you? And they did a great job. There was probably over 15, 20 different renditions. We settled on one, and then we went back, and it was that resiliency from this student who was incredible, where she just kept working and gaining feedback as we kind of continued to push that thought process to come with this really clean, really amazing, really simplified version of what a portrait of a graduate could be. Some schools and some districts choose, and I'm not pointing fingers at them, that's okay, that's their decision, to use what's called a profile of a graduate. Profile means here it is, and it's designed for you. A portrait is you paint it yourself. You create it yourself. It's a blank canvas. I think that student represented well the persistence and resilience, and that's what we want our mathematical mindsets to be as well, is persistent and resilient. You don't just arrive. You're not just innately, I'm going to now be a mathematical person. I'm going to be a math person. It's a mindset, and it's implied, and that's why I'm really excited about our Project Lead the Way course for Algebra 1, because it's taking that skills and knowledge, it's taking project-based learning experiences and those engineering concepts, and creating a class that's based on those two. That's awesome. That's application and that's learning. Strong communicators, both being able to publicly speak, as you see our student representatives that will be approved at our June 18th meeting, they're unbelievable. They do a great job. They provide information on a regular basis to you about information and happenings, but most importantly, they're able to speak about concerns and feedback that you want from them and speak very passionately about them. Engage citizens. We want our students to continue to be active within their school, within their townships, within their municipalities, within Perry County and Dauphin County, within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, within the United States of America, and globally as a citizen. We want them to be personally responsible for oneself. That looks different at every grade level, right? I know it certainly does in my own household as well. As you look at how we stack those opportunities for students to have that responsibility. And we want them to be innovators. Yeah, we do want students to be able to create all kinds of incredible programs, all kinds of incredible inventions, as we saw students through the State Invention Convention creating and redefining all different kinds of different inventions that could be late-breaking and revolutionizing. But we also want them to be innovators in their own way. We want them to think differently about how they study, how they handle, how they manage what becomes stress for them, and innovative in their ways to be able to manage and look at and prepare them for jobs. As A.J. Giuliani said, we're preparing for jobs that are not yet created. Our job is to prepare them not for something, but for everything. And that is what is that's what we do. This is what gets me fired up. This is incredible work done by an incredible group that I can't thank enough. I'm super excited to get this posted throughout the school. I'm super excited to get this posted on our website in a format that becomes intuitive. When you click on it and it gives you a description, it gives you also, as we build it out, hopefully videos that you get to see what it is and hear what it is and begin to really take root on this. Thank you. Questions? Thank you for your work. Several of you were a part of this, and I know we shared out different elements of this work too. So in essence, all of you were a part of it, so thank you. All right, so you'll see this hopefully as June 18th board approval. We'll get a board approval stamp on the corner of this. That way they see that when it's posted, we as a collective group of 10 endorse and support this, and it's our job to breathe life into it. All right. I'm not sure where we're at. Getting fired up. Lifted presentation. Perfect when it comes to strong communicators, and it's a nice segue into a portrait of a graduate and us modeling those elements and bringing students in as well. As Mrs. Montosh is setting this up, she has done a phenomenal job, Christine, of planning this conference. Spending hours on Saturdays, spending hours on late nights, thinking and planning, developing, communicating, spearheading with a committee, both internally and externally, to plan this conference. She had a vision, and part of our goal, an overall long-term goal as a collective district, was to continue an outreach and bring like-minded learners together. She took that vision, grew legs with that vision, and began to run with it, and turned it into a dream with a deadline, which became a goal, and now a reality. Great job.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. As Dr. Fox said, Lifted is a teaching and learning conference to bring like-minded individuals together. The purpose of it is to meet the needs of our classroom teachers. While classroom teachers are the primary focus, we also have sessions for administrators, paraprofessionals, nurses, guidance counselors, everybody in the school system. It is June 11th, 2024, so like Ms. Snyder said, it's in 1 week from today. It is all day from 7:30 to 3:30, and it is at the Susquenita High School. So please, if anyone is available, please feel free to come for the day. Come to some sessions, have some breakfast, some lunch. We would love to have you here. So all of this is free to anyone who is attending. It is a free conference thanks to our sponsors. Our sponsors have, we have been provided with $10,650 worth of sponsors. So all of the sponsors, we are able to provide, like I said, breakfast, lunch, prizes, gifts for the presenters, t-shirts for the presenters and all of the helpers. We have snacks for the attendees, and it's no cost to the district. All of it is funded by the sponsors. So I would like to recognize our sponsors. First National Bank was our top sponsor. They did provide that highest level for us, premier sponsor. Then we also had iReady, American College of Education, KEDA, Susquenita Blackhawk Foundation, Keola, and Docio. So all of them were our sponsors, and some of them will be here on during the conference to speak to the teachers or any other attendees as well. We also had local sponsors donate prizes, which is very exciting. We have prizes from Red Rabbit, Climbnasium, Liquid Noise, Buddy Boy, and Blue Mountain Outfitters. So all of them have donated prizes that we're able to give at the end of our conference to attendees. We're gonna do some raffles. We're gonna make some fun ways to give out those prizes. So we do wanna thank all of the local sponsors as well. Miss Erin Murphy is our keynote speaker. I am not going to read all of this to you, but she is a co-author of Project-Based Learning, Real Questions, Real Answers, and How to Unpack PBL and Inquiry and Hacking-Based Project Learning. I do believe Dr. Fox has heard her speak
Yeah, absolutely, and she's came highly recommended from one of my superintendent colleagues who had her in at a previous district he was at several times, and she's hands-on, she's practical, she understands, and she's local here within the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania, and is passionate about the work and passionate to work with educators. So it continues. What is that project-based, challenge-based learning aspect of how we can bundle all of our standards into those meaningful experiences for our students and make them active participants within the learning process.
Thank you. And so not only is she doing keynote speaking, she is doing breakout sessions throughout the entire day. So she will be doing 4 different breakout sessions. So the participants will be able to hear her, and then she'll dive deeper into those sessions as well. I did forget to mention, I gave you an infographic kind of that reviews some of the things that I'm going over. But it's basically everything in here just in an infographic form. And then our sessions, we do have 31 sessions with 35 presenters with a variety of topics. They are under best practices, collaboration, and project-based learning, mindful education and well-being, and tech-driven classrooms. So those are the 4 overarching ideas. Our presenters include Susquenita staff members from other districts, Capital Area Intermediate Unit staff members, somebody from Department of Education, PA Offices of Attorney General, Department of Homeland Security, and one of the board members is also presenting. Our attendees, we do have right now 192 attendees registered to attend from various districts across Pennsylvania. And all Susquenita admin are attending. 79% of professional staff are attending, and 62% of paraprofessional staff are attending. And the last thing I do want to mention is Black Hawk Brew will be here that day. So even if you don't want to come to a session, please come get some coffee or snack from Black Hawk Brew. We're very excited. They will be selling from 9:30 to 12:30 in our Hawk shop. And we're excited for our students. 3 of students are coming in for an hour each to be a part of that.
So you gotta come in the morning.
Any questions? So it's June 11th. It's 7:30 to 8:30 is breakfast networking, so registration, and then at 8:30 is when the keynote starts. Thank you.
Definitely great job, and great job to Mr. Howell and his team for preparing, and great job to the entire committee for putting this together under your leadership and vision. I think it's going to be outstanding to bring this many educators together and to showcase our school district, to welcome all those educators, and to bounce ideas off of each other. Education is not something that should be done in silos, but rather it's something that we all share a common vision of, which is how do we better our practices? How do we reflect? How do we reinvigorate, and how do we continue to grow and change as our students change every year? We thrive to do the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so from lifted presentation into annual budget overview. This is presentation number 7 on the annual budget for June 4th, 2024 caucus meeting. And I will go through this. At any point during the course of this, you can stop me and ask questions. I'm going to do my best and not to go, remember the old micro machines where the guy would talk really, really fast? I naturally talk fast, but I'm going to go through and highlight a couple of points. But if there's anything you want me to go back on and review, we certainly can. So feel free. Stop me at any time by saying stop. The mission statement, I will not read that in verbatim, but I do believe that, in here, it does serve as our continued basis for what we do and how we do it. The budget goals have continued to remain the same, which is to continue to enhance and maintain our curriculum offerings for our students at all grade levels, continue to maintain and enhance our facilities to the best that we're able to do, and work to provide a budget that is fiscally responsible. Our budget approach for 24-25 was a zero-based budget practice. It was not a rollover practice. As of the previous year, you take that budget, you look at the number, and you just add and pad by 2%, 1%. It was a zero-based look at what does it and what are we predicting, and a budget is a prediction model, of what are we predicting that actual cost should be, and looking at, as Mr. Holmes had said, variances between different years to see what we can do to best predict what those expenses will be. We want to align and make sure that it aligns with our instructional goals to enable our outstanding educators and administrators to be able to deliver our curriculum. Budget constraints, you'll see this is probably a commonality amongst the 500 plus school districts throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The number one is cyber charter school payments. Until we receive assistance from the legislature along and much needed as a fundamentally flawed piece of legislation, cyber charter school payments continue to rise, while overall enrollment throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania continues to decline. Our legislator has had a really decent piece of legislation, in my humbled opinion. It was House Bill 1422, and what they need to do, again, in my opinion, is put that over the finish line, and that will be much needed assistance from a lot of different school districts, including ours. Special education costs continue to rise. When Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is a federal act, began to place into federal law, it was founded with the conception and idea that it would be 100% funded. That has fell short of any of those expectations, and certainly it is our responsibility and one we take very seriously. It is one we proudly serve, and we make decisions with families in the best interest of students, not in the best interest of a price. And we will continue to do that because that is what we do. Utilities, as you saw, electricity continues to rise. We see an uptick in liquid propane, as that is a commodity, and gasoline and fuel. We see it with diesel, part of our contract, and we continue to see that kind of ebb and flow a little bit as well. And there's a lot of taxes associated, right, with fuel. Salary and benefits and PSERS continues, and inflationary costs. So the process to date, we started with an overview in January of 2024 and kicked off the year talking about the budget. Well, let me take a step back. The process for us as administrators began in early October. So welcome back. We got all of our students in. Then we began to have discussions amongst administrative staff, collecting and asking teachers, what do you think you need in 24-25? Wait a minute. Welcome back, and you're talking about a budget? Yes, it starts that early. And this process also begins as soon as it's finalized to begin looking at 25, 26 and onward. This is an ongoing process. And actually, we all know that it's a domino and ripple effect, that decisions we make today affect budgets down the road as well. Mr. Holmes and Mrs. Wisen did an excellent job of creating an interactive format that was based on the details with objects and codes and cost codes, and allowed for that intuitive, really a deep dive into every aspect and every everything that the budget is made up on. All 38 million plus is detailed in that interactive format. We had February, March, and April caucus reviews of the budget. We had 3 special board meetings in March, at which time we took a look at certain objects and cost codes and broke that down and answered as many questions on that as we certainly could. We had a May discussion at the caucus on the budget, and at the board meeting we also had a discussion, and we passed the preliminary final budget in May, and we're looking for adoption of the final budget at the June 18th meeting, because between May 22nd and June 18th is 30 days. It needs to sit, and it's out for public review at our website, which is preliminary budget. I believe midway through the page, the splash page, it has its own icon, and you can click on that and see the full budget. Here is that beautiful line graph. When we look at mathematics, this is one of those. This is a really fascinating statistic. This came from the Pennsylvania School Boards Association State of School Education Report that comes out in early October, and you'll see the lavender color is the increasing cost, while the purple color is the charter school enrollment. I'm proud of my colors. Special education expenses is outpacing revenue. We've, school districts throughout Pennsylvania, again, these are not immune to just our school district. This is the same report. 74.8% increase in special education costs over the last 12 years, while state and federal funding has only increased 9.9.
Back to the slide before. Just point of clarification. So if we're looking at, I guess it's 2021-22, in cyber school enrollment is actually, it was going up slightly, then it has gone down, and it's what, 105.2%. But the cost, which the amount that we pay, has climbed exponentially to the point that even though their enrollment is 105.2%, what we pay them has gone up by 232.6%, correct?
That is correct.
I just think it's worth pointing that out, that's ridiculous.
That is correct.
Ridiculous.
That is correct. And certainly, I don't sit here being I believe cyber education and charter schools have a place in education. I think we all do. I just think their funding and how they are funded is not, if touted to be a public school, the amount of fund balance that they're able to cap and create and have, the ability to sometimes have lobbyists on hand, does not speak to a public school setting. So I'm just asking for a cap on tuition rates. I'm asking for parity across the board. I'm asking for the same rules that public schools have to play by, that a public cyber charter has to play by as well. That's what I'm asking.
And I think it's a little bit of a misnomer to say that that's cost versus actual enrollment, because it doesn't have to cost that much. It's the amount of income they're receiving versus their enrollment. And they continue to receive more and more and more and more and more income. If you were to look at our comparison that way, it would not anywhere be near that. Actually, we're probably spending less per student now than we ever have, given the fact we hadn't raised taxes for so long. So it's not the cost, it's just how much they like to spend, which we pay. You pay, taxpayers pay.
And I think it's also valid to point out that in order to spend some of the fund budget, there are large buildings going up all across the Commonwealth for a cyber program. Fixed buildings, like large buildings. So to be able to justify this expenditure of the money.
Yeah, and I mean, it's nice to be able to build a $30,000 Caterpillar float to put in parades advertising your cyber school. That's not anything we could possibly ever do, but that's classic types of things that are happening. And again, I'm not anti-cyber school at all. I think people should have choices. I just think the playing field should be level.
Well said. Thank you very much. Overview of estimated budget expenses is $38,563,830, and that has not changed from our May meeting. The drivers continue to be there as well. One note, I know it was back in April when we were having discussions. Special education cyber charter is now indicated in there, so we omitted. It is there, and it's fully tracked separately in the budget. Salary increases are contractual, and we continue to look at the needs and placements based upon the students' needs and begin to meet those needs to the best of our ability. Certainly our number one is always least restrictive environment. It's always our plan, and we try to provide the best we can to provide that student with a free and appropriate public education. Projected estimated revenue is $37,421,485. Our initial plan and preliminary budget includes a proposed 6.8% adjusted tax increase. It is important to note that the Act 1 adjusted index is 7.2%, so it is not a full Act 1 index. It is just slight below the adjusted Act 1 index of 7.2%. Based on recent assessments from Perry and Dauphin County, made up our reports here as well, and using that information for the revenue build. We are using flatline projections for basic education subsidy for the Commonwealth. We have not heard much. We actually saw some informational news that came through today from the state via federal government that actually all title programs throughout, it didn't hit us very hard, just a little bit at the preliminary numbers right now, but across the board, it's $20 million less for federal title programs this year across school districts. So that's money coming from the state, passed through from this, money from the federal government passed through to the state to LEAs, school districts. So even with a 6.8% deficit with revenue versus expenses, we are still looking at the utilization of some of our fund balance at 1.142345, looking at approximately $1.1 million. When it's 4 and below, you let go, right? 5 below, give it a shove. That's bad jokes when it comes to, but just for whole number purposes, bad jokes at 8:30 at night. Historic millage review. So it's important. This is kind of a review of Perry and Dauphin County. Perry and Dauphin County is an interesting relationship. We're a two-county school district that is subject to the State Tax Equalization Bureau, affectionately known as STEB. Certainly you'll see kind of a seesaw effect go. That is natural, and we've seen that relationship happen throughout several years. Just a couple of things you'll see throughout Perry County where your taxes actually, the millage rate actually went down. The homestead farmstead exclusion has seen a 20% median increase throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This is just a description of what the legal definition of what the farmstead homestead exclusion is, and for those who apply for the farmstead homestead. Our school district has seen a $190,000 increase in the program from the state. Our school district is totaled $1,144,678.18, roughly 4,063 homes available. With a 6.8% tax increase, that's why there's a star there, it would be roughly $281.73 per eligible household. And your millage rate is what sets the homestead farmstead eligibility for that number. Potential impact on property owners in Perry County. A 6.8% increase yields an estimated 0.8631 mils. This equates to roughly $86.31 per $100,000 of assessed property. And you'll see kind of the equations down the road. Here, a $200,000 property is $172.62. I believe the average median property in Perry County assessed value is $132,100. And the mean assessed value, thank you, is $146,382. So you'll see in this range here at the top is the majority in the mean and median value of assessed properties. Dauphin County would be impacted by the State Tax Equalization Bureau and would be impacted regardless. They would see a 0.71 millage increase due to rebalance regardless of a tax increase. With a proposed tax increase, there would be an additional 0.6035 mils per 1,000, or $60.35 per 100,000. Adding those two together, it's 1.3135 millage impact for a total sum of $131.35 per $100,000. And the impact there is associated at the bottom half of this particular graphic and slide. This is, again, directly related from that state education report. And I think it's really important that I look at this when inflation hits school districts. Yes, it hits everybody. And anticipated actions due to budgetary pressures, 65.9% of school districts responded raising local property taxes. 51.4% say they're going to draw from fund balance. 39.2% said they're going to reduce staffing. And we have always looked at what is the impact of not filling versus filling. And we did. There was 2 positions. We decided not to fill a vacancy that we had, a school counselor at the high school. And we were looking and seeking approval to add an additional member in the business office for separation of responsibilities and for the sheer impact that the budget office has in terms of responsibility and filings. And it was the direction not to add that position. So at this point, we've done 1, 2, and 3. And I would also say 4 as we look to postpone and utilize a long-term planning facility program and utilize any potential borrowed money for any long-term capital improvement projects that may need to occur. One of the questions we get asked a lot, and I'm sure you get asked a lot, is what impact will a county assessment have on my property? I can't speak to what it'll have on your property, but what I can speak to is what impact it may have at the Susquenita School District. We are not in charge of the Perry County reassessment. It's our understanding that the reassessment will take place and be concluded on January 1st of 2026 in and around that area. But it is kind of a mistaken idea that as fair market value increases, a tax bill will increase by the same proportion. And this can't happen because all taxing districts are required by state law to lower their taxing millage by the same ratio that the tax base increased. An example, if a tax base were to quadruple, then the county's millage rate would need to be lowered by 1/4. Kind of taking that amount of money and associated in a larger pool across the board. So that is important, and I want to bring people's attention to a website that Perry County has, because I might not have done it justice by explaining it, but if you went to vgisi.com/Perry, I believe that is the provider that Perry County is using for their assessment. And we can actually click on that, and we can take it right to that website, and you can see that. I hope it works. Should probably check that. And you'll see the information here that's produced by Perry County, not from Susquenita School District, but you'll see the information and a lot of different questions and answers. So residents, please, I would draw your attention to that website for answers to questions pertaining to an assessment and what impact that may have for you. It's really informational, and if there's any questions in there you have following that, I believe there's an area to place questions in. And it looks like they'll get back to you based on a question you may have.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it mandated zero-based taxing, or is it just a certain amount you're not allowed to raise? Because when the last assessment was done, we voted to stay 0, but we could have raised taxes there.
Well, I think you always have the ability to raise taxes based on what the adjusted Act 1 index is. So usually...
It wasn't because of that. It was because we had to vote on 2 things. We had to vote on the millage rate change, because we could have taken an increase there. We wouldn't have had to stay at 0. And then we had to vote on the Act 1.
The Act 1 adjusted.
So is it required now that it's 0, or is there still fluctuation there?
You're correct. There will be 2 votes again. One will be to accept the new millage. And according to the literature, it says the law that you're not allowed to have a tax increase based upon a reassessment. So you'll be voting on the adjusted millage based upon the new assessed values, and then whether or not you want a tax increase based upon the needs of the district.
Thanks.
I have a quick question. So just looking at the information that Mr. Holmes provided for us earlier under finances and then what we have in the preliminary budget, and just want to make sure I have the numbers right. It looks like we have revenues that are increasing by $5 million and expenditures that are also increasing by about $5 million. If we're projecting the $5 million with the flat funding from the state, where is the $5 million increase in revenues coming from?
So you're looking at the sheets that were passed out earlier? That don't
Yeah,
include
so
the-
right now our budget for last year was 32,900,000. And you're saying we're about at 100% because of, we did get some increases in basic ed subsidy, but some other things were not quite in yet. And you don't have some of the ESSER's money in there, but I don't think that that's a ton of money coming in yet. But our budget for this year is showing $37 million in revenue. But we're projecting a flat state subsidy so far. I'm just wondering, where did that 5 million come from? Is it coming from the new homes, taxes? Like, where's that 5 million coming from?
So last year's revenue overall was projected at $33,796,274. This year's projected revenue, $37,612,513. That change is $3,816,239. And I have a chart, a graph, I can probably best to share it with you that shows the differences between the funding from last year to this year.
I
For
believe it
example-
is, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I believe it is in that, the intuitive format,
Oh, yes.
master overall budget that you have. It's one of the tabs that's noted as revenue estimates.
Yeah, but so why does the budget that you gave us just earlier tonight show revenue budgeted at 32,931,000? That was in the original budget
For this year,
for the
year that
one
we're
we're
in.
currently in, yes.
that does not include any of the federal revenues, which last year were
So that doesn't- that-
$1,912,609.
So it's not really the current budget then? It's not the current budgeted amount of revenue, this 32,931? I know you said the
Correct,
federal.
that does not include any revenue from the grants,
Okay.
correct?
Okay. So again, we still have over $3 million coming in revenue before any kind of increase in
Correct.
state subsidy increases. Is that 3 million also including the tax increase?
No.
The 3 million's not including the tax increase.
The 3 million that has not been included in here would be all due to the grant revenue.
Are you speaking in
For
terms
next
of
year,
for next
for the
year?
next year's budget, that is
Yes.
a $3 million increase
Okay.
in revenues. Is that including the 800 and some $1,000 that we're getting from taxes, from a tax increase?
Yes. That number right there, correct.
And our,
Correct.
That's what she's asking.
That's correct. The entire time we've been sharing revenue, we've included
right.
that number in there.
So I just
Correct.
think it's important, I know we've had some discussions prior to this about the budget, that it was as if we weren't going to get any more money unless we had a tax increase, which is really not the case, because we're getting $2.5 million more in revenue in the next year's budget before we even have a state subsidy increase, if we were to get it. Is that right?
If you look at that particular tab that Dr. Fox is referring to, 24-25 revenue estimates, you'll see where we have increased revenue for the next year. For example, current Act 511 earned income taxes, we're estimating an additional $400,000 of revenue. Real estate tax transfers, $75,000 increase. So the increases are all listed there, what we're projecting for the next year.
And that's the key word, certainly projections.
Right. Right, I'm just making note of the fact that we do get more money, we're getting more money this year than we had last year in terms of income. We will have more money, we're spending more, but we have more.
Yep, unfortunately, just like households, we are kind of a large household, and as prices in goods go up and commodities go up, so does everything here within the school district also. Absolutely. So the millage rate for the 24-25 school year is not official until the adoption of the final budget, which will occur for your vote June 18th. The full budget is online. The preliminary budget is available there. It is lots of reports that is there. It's the official report for the preliminary budget is available online. And again, the June 18th, 2024 regular scheduled board meeting is for the final adoption of the budget. Any questions at this point?
Are you, oh, okay. Well, how is this vote going to appear on the agenda next week?
So the agenda will include all three. And again, the goal is to pass a budget in June. At the preliminary budget, you included the maximum tax, you included a 6.8% tax millage increase. It cannot go above 6.8%. You can vote below it. And we've included a couple scenarios, which includes, I believe, a 4.8%. I'll need to look at the budget or at the agenda right now.
No, I think that's right.
As well as, or 4.48%, excuse me, and a 0%. You can modify that in any way, shape, and form you so choose and desire. We're going to pass out what effect the difference has in proposed millages, so you get a chance to see what those differences would be in a really nice kind of graphic handout that looks at the varying different impact that a millage tax increase could have.
So if option 1, option 2, and option 3 would be no tax increase at all, correct?
Absolutely, and you have many of options too. While those three are represented there, you as the board can go in any format you so desire, but those are just three for illustrative purposes. It will take a motion, a second, and a roll call vote.
You don't have a third option on here? You just have the difference between the two options?
That is simply a graphic handout that we had for you to see the difference between, I believe it's a 4.48 and a 6.8. 0%, I can give you what the millage increase, or the millage would look like for a 0% tax increase. Going any further, we've just taken a look at those two options. Again, sitting here and spending the time I have with you, I would be reposed and repressed not to state as your 10th member, a non-voting member. I think it would behoove ourselves to look at some type of increase, but 24-25 with a 0% tax millage increase, you would be looking at a projected deficit of $2,179,945. You would actually see in Perry County a millage rate decrease, and you would see what appears to be a millage rate decrease in Dauphin County as well. Which would be a loss of revenue for the school district. All right. Any additional questions, feel free. Ask throughout.
Could I just ask, when was the last time we've ever raised taxes for this district?
It appears to be back in the 2016-17 school year,
Is that so?
but I don't have access. The state's website only allows me to go back that far. So I think it's at least been that long since there's been an increase.
I thought it was more recent than that.
I have the historic millage review. We can go back maybe to slide number 12. You'll see kind of that. It's hard to really tell, and with this projection, to take a look back and see if there was an increase or not based upon sometimes the stub and how it rebalances itself based upon the two-county system.
Maybe you're right, because
It's
I
hard
don't
to-
see it on there, so.
Yeah.
Those differences there are all due to STEB.
Sorry.
What?
Those differences are all due to the STEB rebalancing.
So maybe before the 17-18 school year, sir. I'm not. I apologize.
Yeah, I thought it was more recent than that, but it must not have been. Because it was like 600,000. So it was whatever the max was.
All right. Last presentation of the night is looking at some position description reviews. Talked about this a little bit, wanted to get some additional feedback and just from that as well. Interested really in some feedback and conversations from you as a whole. So the first position, looking at it, is our head athletic trainer. We've looked and utilized contracted services for several years. We believe this past year has been phenomenal with our current athletic trainer, but it was a tough go to get an athletic trainer. Athletic trainers now require that master's degree credential, and for us it was we received a lot of no's trying to find somebody. And we were able to recruit a community member out of the stands who has that certification and has done a phenomenal job and is incredible. And I would like to maintain that position in-house, which I believe it will be a very similar replacement financially from contracted services to in-house. I think it will also give us greater abilities for the ATC, to serve as the assistant athletic director when the athletic director is not there. So to serve as that game manager, that game director, to provide that overall game administration, because the athletic director cannot be at every event, especially when there are multiple events happening, both home and away. The athletic trainer can spend more time with our athletes, customizing injury treatment prevention programs and plans for student athletes, can provide a continuity and consistency, enhance athlete injury prevention rehabilitation, and a needed aspect of nutrition. What I really get excited about is we look at opportunities for students and begin to have student interns for sports medicine intern program, and add another layer of supervision to support our coaches and player safety. We would look at an Act 93 position rather than a collective bargaining position. It gives us much more flexibility within the Act 93, and looking at a 210-day contract, which there are some aspects right around end of June, beginning of July, where you would not see really the spiking of sports at that point. The next would be to transform payroll and benefits position to an accountant position. And we're going to add more responsibilities of basic accounting practices. So not adding an additional staff member within our office, it's adding greater responsibilities, but paying an individual for those greater responsibilities, supporting them, and adding additional responsibilities within it as another layer of that professionalism within the staff and within the department. Looking again with payroll benefits, the Affordable Care Act, federal and tax reporting. We will look to target someone with an associate's degree or bachelor's degree program, or somebody who's in it, and has an understanding of accounting practices and who is willing to grow with us as an organization, and is willing to take those concepts that they're learning or have learned and apply them into practice. My goal is that they help to co-lead with our assistant to the Super of Finance and Operations monthly reconciliations meetings for these monthly reports that you see, as well as internal compliance reviews, and help with the samplings needed for our audit. This will be a great needed position for our business office, and we believe that with the current financial numbers that we have, this would remain relatively a budget neutral position. So what I'm looking for is for your considerations for me to possibly go out to secure individuals to bring to your attention at the June board meeting.
Are you looking for this person to be the HR person then too?
I'm not, no. So here within our office, there are elements of benefits, financial reporting associated with benefits, making sure that those benefit payments to our trust is paid, making sure that compliance within the Affordable Care Act, those elements. So no, it wouldn't replace coordinator of human resources. They would work together. They would always work together, but no, it would not replace that person. It would not be adding an additional staff member either. It would be rebranding a position.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. This is a budget neutral. These are basically budget neutral things. So you're not asking, can I go fill these positions per se, but can I change? Are we okay with the position descriptions, correct?
Yes, and then allowing me to bring names for approval.
Yeah, absolutely.
I absolutely. So accountant, we had the pleasure of interviewing several candidates. I have not reached back to, I have not followed back up with those candidates since our initial. One of the things that I certainly was transparent to them about is I wanted to share this information with you first. And certainly have a head athletic trainer candidate to whom myself and Mr. Funk interviewed and is interested. And certainly if it is, if you're as a collective group in agreement, then I would like to bring those names for your consideration. So yes, I do. But nothing has been promised to any candidate.
So is it going to come to other possible candidates?
100%. But like anything, I would like to act relatively quick on positions due to the fact of the learning curve associated with everything. And we're seeing that right now with teachers, right? As we begin and we need to move, we need to make sure that all that information is ready to go, that we have all the paperwork needed in the field of education so we can offer conditionally and move. Because the great thing is we're getting outstanding applicants, but it's a very competitive market. All right. Thank you very much for everything. I believe that is the conclusion. We do have, we're going to open for public comment at this time, and then I think we have a public electronic comment as well. Does anybody in our audience have any public comments they would like to make? No?
Kelly Noss, Penn Township. I'd like to welcome the new board member. Welcome. Hopefully we don't scare you away. The board's amazing. They've been doing a great job with the budget. And me personally, I'm sad to see Mr. Holmes leaving. You have done an amazing job. With me sitting here in the audience, listening to the budget meetings, it's been thorough and able for me to understand as a parent and community member. So thank you, and good luck to what you do in the future.
Thank you very much. Oops,
Yep,
sorry.
thank you. Nobody else? All right, we do have one public comment online I'll read. It's from Tabby Wagner in Rye Township. It says, there's a rumor going around that the school wants to combine all three schools on one bus to eliminate costs. This would not eliminate costs and would cause a ton of problems. You can fit 3 elementary kids to a seat, but not middle and high school, so there wouldn't be less buses. Also, I personally do not want my 6-year-old on the bus with 12-year-olds and certainly not 18-year-olds. Also, we lost an amazing bus driver because no support from the school administration. The day she left, we immediately started having problems.
Well, certainly let me speak to that last element. Certainly as school administration, when we receive bus misconduct reports, we go into full research mode, asking for bus video, which is imperative for us to receive that bus video in a timely fashion from our providers in order to be able to activate and research that. As we know with students, the amount of information that happens between day 1 and day 3, the sooner we get that information, the sooner we're able to act on it. Our administrators do a phenomenal job. Our bus drivers do a phenomenal job. We continually work together within safety meetings, and we attend all meetings necessary to be able to provide that ongoing support. I'm sorry to see any driver go as well, and I'm sorry that if that individual did not feel supported. But certainly we try to provide every ounce of support that we can for everything that we do to be able to support our students. Our drivers are imperative. They are the first people oftentimes from our school district as representatives that they see in the morning, and the last person sometimes from our school district that they see at the end of the day. We want to make sure that that experience is as most pleasurable as possible. To that end, that statement including a rumor, certainly it's anything that's out is truly speculative. What we try to do is look at all avenues of cost savings mechanisms. That is our responsibility, and one we do very to the utmost prudence. It is our responsibility to make sure that we take a look at everything. As I said, with open positions, we look for what is the impact of not filling that position, what is the impact on programs, people, and our students. We take a look at the impact of what it means for our facilities. If a particular delayed program or maintenance is not particularly done. And the impact on a particular busing route or system, it is our initiative to also look at everything. In terms of a plan for that, there is no plan for that at this time. There's been no formal presentation at this time. There's been no formal study conducted at this time pertaining to buses or one particular bus run. In terms of having and allowing more flexibility with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania now, when in terms of 180 days or 990 and 900 instructional hours, you'll see school districts throughout Pennsylvania begin to do things a little bit more creatively. Again, there is no ultimate plans for that, but again, a detailed study, including study and feedback from parents and guardians, would need to occur before anything was finalized.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right. No further public comments? All right. I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.